Hello and welcome to another live episode of the Modern Lending Podcast. I'm your host, Alec Hansen, but you know that because you're staring at my name on the social media channel. So thanks for hanging out with us today. We are coming down to our third in a series of modern consultations and quoting for our customers. This is an amazing conversation we need to have more of because we've been trained in this mortgage industry in this apprenticeship style game. We learned from our mentors, we were trained up, and then we kind of took what they did and now that's what we do. But man, we know for a fact that flinging out an LE is not the appropriate response when someone asks, what's your rate? And when I challenge loan officers all the time to say, well, what do you say when somebody says, what's your rate? I get a bunch of organic answers. But let's really dig deep into one of the best teams in the world. We had Dave Savage on, we had Barry Habib on, but now I'm bringing on Sam Hansen. Sam Hansen is in partnership with the Gaylord Hansen Team. If you don't know who they are, you're living under a rock. Last year, their team funded 1,840 units for $858 million. These guys know what they're doing. Year to date, 526 loans for $264 million. Let me bring on Sam Hansen. I know it's another Hansen. Just give him a little grace. He's got the EN. He's got the wrong spelling. But we'll bring him on right now and have a great conversation. Thanks for hanging out with us today. Dude, you got the COVID beard. You're looking so well. I guess it's like almost post-COVID, but thanks, Sam, for coming to hang out today, man. It's gonna be fun.
Man, hey, what a privilege and an honor. I got to follow Habib and Dave Savage, my mentors.
Putting you up there with the legend, dude.
Couldn't we have gone and like the other order? It would have been a little better.
No. And I went in the order with Dave and Barry, who are both, great minds in the business. But Sam, what I love about you in this conversation is you're a practitioner. I mean, you are in the streets every day, managing one of the highest functioning teams in the industry, still talking to customers, still originating, still working with the group, providing leadership and mentorship. And I think that's a unique perspective. And I God bless Barry and Dave and even me, but like you are in the mix. And so what people don't know is this conversation today on consultation and quoting is really a chapter in the Modern Lending Playbook. And Sam, for those of you that are hanging out with us, Sam was instrumental in the creation of that content. You know, when you talk about how are the best teams quoting and consulting customers, there's a science and an art to that experience. And so, Sam, what I'd love for you to do is just give everybody a couple minute background on how you got focused on the evolution of your own business. Everyone came into this business interestingly enough, but what sparked you to just really push to become one of the greats, to really hone your craft? And then we'll get into kind of what you and your team are doing with customers today. But give everybody a little background.
Yeah, I got into the business pre-recession, pre the Great Recession. And, when the recession hit, it kind of made everybody, wake up and say, hey, how are we going to do this? What are we going to do now? All the products were gone. A lot of the lenders were gone. I mean, paychecks stopped coming. So we had to reinvent ourselves pretty fast. And I just, Bill and I started talking, and it just wasn't a good experience most of the time for borrowers. I mean, it was hard to get a loan. It wasn't transparent. Fees would change, rates would change. We just said, hey, let's try and build a structure and a process and get the right people that could really serve people the right way. And so that was kind of that's kind of where we started. And here we are about 12, 13 years later. And we just love helping people buy houses, and they deserve to get the right information, and they deserve for things to go properly. So, getting people to, understand you and know what they're getting into and leading them to the right strategy is just super important in today's world.
Well, so let's just dive into the meat a little bit. And those of you that are watching us and hanging out right now, feel free to make this collaborative for you. If you have a question that pops up and you're curious, we really appreciate that. And if you're watching this in the future, hit us up with a comment, #bypassed. Let us know you're still there, and we appreciate it. So Sam, let's talk about consulting customers today. And let's even talk about it in the lens of pre and post COVID, because I think that's important because COVID's not here forever. And so let's look pre-COVID for a second. What were you and your team doing when a customer would come in and, want some information, want a rate. I get this all the time. The customers come in, the first thing they say is, what's your rate? They just immediately want to like drill down. So why don't you give everybody the experience you guys are providing, the questions you're asking, walk everyone through how you're training your loan officers. Let's start there.
Yeah, I think even if I back up for a second, Alec, the important thing is to have the right mindset as well as the training and knowledge and experience to properly advise a customer.
Yeah,
I don't believe you can't have that mindset until you have the right structure, the right process, and the right people in place to execute properly. Because if you don't have confidence in your product and your delivery and your execution, you're not going to be able to consult, advise, quote, at a high level. So the first thing you got to do is our team is just built up of highly trained people. We have the very best tools in the industry, and having the right place that you're working at, having the right products, having the right, strategies is really the foundation of being able to consult and quote properly. So I always, our team is nobody can do this alone. And so, the team is really, really strong, and that allows the people that do the advisory work to do it with a high level of confidence. And I think that's where you got to start.
You know what? I want to add to that too, because I think you're right. No, I mean, you are right, because a lot of what loan officers struggle to sell is the value they really provide the customer outside or around the interest rate. Yep. Because not every loan officer and not every team is created equal. You are not getting the same service just bumping around if you go to random loan officers. And so you're totally right. You really do have to understand your value proposition. Your systems have to be dialed in order to have the confidence to deliver to the customer the right commentary.
Yeah, and you ask, like, so hey, what's your rate? That's the question you're going to get, because that's the thing that everybody thinks is the most relevant. And it's like, hey, is it okay? Obviously the rate is important, and we wouldn't be in business if we didn't have a competitive rate. But can we just set that aside for a second? And is it okay if I ask you a few questions to make sure we're a good fit for you? And nobody says no to that.
You can't just glaze over that comment, man. That's such a structured comment. Like, I can tell as you delivered it, like, this has been a honed response. It's almost, I don't want to say scripted because you came across so casual but I mean, it was a very intentional, like, you recognized how important it was for the customer. You didn't blow it off. You asked for permission to kind of put it to the side for a second to really go into these other questions. I mean, that is a brilliant, conversational, quote, your script cue, whatever it is. So let's go on from there, but don't gloss over it, because that's,
yeah, I mean, and you just got to be authentic. You got to be like, hey, I know the rate's important, but man, there's ordering your appraisal and your title on time and reviewing it properly and protecting your earnest money deposit and closing on time so you don't, fall out of contract. There's underwriting things properly and making sure we execute on time. There's speed. There's aggression to get the contract accepted. I mean, so if it's a three-legged stool, I mean, yeah, a good rate's one of them, but there's other things holding up the stool. So, once you ask that question, hey, is it okay if we set that aside for a second and can I ask you a few questions to make sure we're a good fit for you? Okay, yeah, and so now you're kind of.
We're gonna pause. I'm gonna pause you so much today. I know it, because these are gems that you've been crafting your art. You've been working on your process for years, and so the fact that you now turn the corner on the customer to a degree and explain and ask, hey, we might not be the right fit for you. And I can see a customer being like, what do you mean? Like, you would not work with me? But it's a great comment, because by the way, the maturity of most originators, Sam, as you know, is not to say that. They don't say that. They want the customer no matter what. They never would say, we got to make sure we're a good fit for you and you're a good fit for us.
Yeah, I mean, you got to be confident in doing it. You got to believe. I mean, if somebody's telling me they want a reverse mortgage, I mean, I'm not a good person to do a reverse mortgage. I'm not a reverse mortgage expert. So, you got to get to the, typically it'll go like, hey, what is the approximate purchase price and what area you're looking in? I want to make sure I can lend in your area. One, you start to get an idea of their approximate purchase price. Sometimes they ask, well, I'm going to need a little help with that. No problem. How much money are you thinking to put down? That's a really easy one to ask. And there's usually 95% of the time an answer. Where is that money coming from? How long do you, I mean, a basic question is, how long do you plan on living there? I mean, you know, to build the right strategy for them. And, you know, as you're going through these questions, you know, hey, what's a comfortable payment? Do you know what a comfortable payment looks like? We don't want to overextend you. You know, we as lenders calculate how you get approved one way, but that doesn't mean that's your comfort level. So you're taking them through the questions and you're starting to learn, and you just got to listen a lot. You really have to listen. I mean, our team believes that every lead, what, you know, in mortgage world we call lead, every lead is gold. It is, you know, we want to convert every single lead. We don't, you know, take any of them lightly. You know, our percentages, you know, we take an application for about 67% of the leads that we get.
Yep.
And we know that on purchases, we close about 35% of the leads we get. And the reason I point that out is because you have to know your numbers so that you can hone your craft and you know how to consult and advise better, and you know where you stand. So, you know, you really just want to get to a place where you fully understand what the customer needs. You turn it in and say, hey, you know what, we're going to be an excellent fit for you. The next step is, and you're getting started. And, you know, if you want to talk about, you know, current times, right now is the lowest inventory level ever. So we'll start having conversations with people and be like, hey, listen, you know, are you looking to buy a house right away? Is it 6 months away? Like, do you have a good understanding of what type of market we're in? No, what do you mean? Well, so let's take you through this. When it's a seller's market, there's 3 types of markets. When it's a seller's market, and that means there's less than 3 months inventory. We measure, in the real estate world, measure inventory. If there's 9 homes for sale and they're selling at 3 homes per month, that's a 3-month inventory. 3 months or less is a seller's market. That means there's more buyers than sellers, and you're going to have to be really, really aggressive and fast to get your contract accepted. And then you can explain to them that a balanced market's 3 to 6 months. That means you don't have to rush as much. You don't, you know, you have more options to request sellers to do things, get repairs. And then you have more than 6 months, which is where it turns into a buyer's market. And that's where there's a lot of inventory and there's a lot of choices. And that's when likely prices are correcting. So, you know, you start to get a feel of what their knowledge is, how they understand the market to be. I mean, you wouldn't believe, Alec, I see buyers right now. It's such a craze. I see buyers making offers and not only putting earnest money deposits, but also writing a non-refundable check to the seller that says, if I don't buy your house, you can keep it. It's crazy. So you got to prepare people for that. You got to advise them of what's going on. You know, it's like if you find a house and you're like, yeah, I'm busy this weekend, I'll look at it Monday, like, you just move on to the next house. So, you know, there's certain, you got to adapt to the market. You got to adapt to the different tools that are you know, in our industry. We happen to use Mortgage Coach, total cost analysis. I believe, you know, and Dave Savage will, you know, this is his mission. Like, every family deserves to know what they're getting into, and every family deserves a total cost analysis. So we use that religiously. 99% of any loan we do, somebody's getting a total cost analysis.
So I want to go back and unpack something real quick, and then we'll move on to total cost analysis and something like that, because that's important. But one of the terms that I've coined from your group and watching what you guys do is this concept of a hopes and dreams call, right? And the hopes and dreams call, for those listening, it has nothing to do with their application, right? Their application conversation is different. That's where do you bank, and, you know, gimme. But the hopes and dreams call is this desire to understand the person. And I believe that you can never fully quote a customer successfully without doing what I've taken from Sam, which is this hopes and dreams call. So give everybody kind of an overview of what that means.
Yeah. So I kind of went through a little bit of it, but, you know, I mean, you know, usually a borrower's calling you, somebody referred them. You know, you really want to get an understanding of, hey, how do you know that person? Like, that person's super important to us. I mean, they trust us to take care of you. They referred you to us. We really appreciate them. Like, how do you know them? And, you know, you start to get a dialogue. You start to get some, you start to build a little rapport, and then that's, you know,
we got to go back again, because it's too good, Sam. like the first questions that you're asking them is, how do you know the referral partner? And building up the referral partner who sent them to you, which has got to make the realtor feel good, because now you're giving them a attaboys. But I love this. It really has nothing to do with the mortgage process yet. You're like, hey, we have this mutual referral partner. How do you know him? How do we know him? And that's kind of an icebreaker. I love it, dude. You breeze through it like it wasn't intentional and thoughtful. And that's my whole point of this podcast, is letting people know, like, Sam's a mastercraft at this thing. So everything he's saying, he's had years and years of experience building and curating and deciding, like, no, I start here. And so, for him, it's going to come off the tongue naturally, but I want everyone to hear it for the first time to be like, oh yeah, that was smart. That was intentional and thoughtful. So keep going.
Yeah. We call that the triangle of trust. So basically it's like, hey, you trust them. They trust me. You trust me. You just close it. So you're building rapport, and that's, when they, hey, what questions do you have? What are your thoughts? What are your fears about this process? And you can start to get a little bit of an idea of what's important to them. You can ask them about the house. Hey, tell me about the house that you're getting, you're making an offer on. So you really start to learn about the person, and that's where you would start, hey, is it okay if I ask you a few questions to make sure we're a good fit? And it's always the same 5 questions. Where are you looking? What approximate purchase price? How much are you putting down? Where's it coming from? How long are you going to live there? What payment's comfortable for you? Maybe that's 6. We added 1. So, I always, like I said, if somebody just wants to go straight to rate, I mean, it takes a lot of confidence to do this, and still most people won't do this. But I mean, I will literally say to people, look, if the interest rate is the only thing that's important to you out of all the things that are important, if that's all you care about, we're not a good fit for you. You're always going to be able to go on the internet and find somebody that's 1/8 or 1/4% lower than us.
Dude, that takes courage and maturity, Sam. And you even get, you asterisked it, but you're right. If they're not willing, because, by the way, you would never say this to a client because it'd be offensive, but you get the best rate in the world. You can't close on time. You lose your earnest money. How's that feel? How's that good rate feel? Like it was never real. Or like, you're working with somebody who's not local and you can never get your offer accepted. So
it's a purchase. I mean, there's moving trucks. It's so, it's very, very complex. I mean, you're not calling a call center that doesn't care. Like, I mean, call centers, if you're doing a refinance, it's not as important as when you're talking to people that are going to move and move into a house. So yeah, that's the hopes and dreams call. And like I said, hey, we're going to be a really good fit. That's right. That's really what we specialize in. Here's the next steps. And, the next step is, hey, we need to get some information from you. And that's the loan application.
So let's talk about now the quote delivery process. So you've gone through this, they've gone down your path. They've, had these conversations with you, and now we're ready to present some options. And I know you guys always typically present options. So I want to talk about that. I didn't mean to skip over that, because some customers come in with, I want a 30-year fixed. And they have in their brain this concept of, that's what I should have. That's what my dad had and my grandfather had. And that's the loan for me. And it might not be the loan for them. They might be moving in 2 years. So when you go to present a rate, you mentioned you use total cost analysis with Mortgage Coach, but, break down just what are you delivering to the customer? What's the experience like? Simplify this for everybody.
Yeah. I mean, everybody has to quote a customer somehow. And I mean, some people make Excel spreadsheets. Some people just type it in an email. Some people, make a PowerPoint. Like I'm not, there's lots of ways to do this. We just choose to use Mortgage Coach total cost analysis because it's by far the most state-of-the-art, efficient way for even on our side, as selfishly to do it from our side, it's the most efficient, but it's the best for the customer. So, I mean, it's really a no-brainer. I don't even know any other type of quoting software that's even close. You can do videos. People can see your face. They can hear your voice. They can see how much you care. Hey, here's your options. We want you to be able to choose how you spend your money. It's, even if the 30-year fix is right for them, there's 3 different options of 30-year fix, or 4 or 5. And once they start to understand that, and, they might want to put more down, they might want to put less down. They might want to keep money in the asset sides of things, making money, and realize like, oh my gosh, so, my rate's 3.25% over here. I was going to put $500,000 down, but here's my payment, and I could keep it over here, and you're telling me, you know, I've been making 7%.
Yep.
So you just have to have a tool that can actually handle all this. You have to have a tool that can show these costs over time and how they change depending on the inputs. So, you know, what we do is we build one, we'll email it to them, you text it to them, email it to them, and we'll let them know that, hey, here's some options. We'll start it out with a video, and it says, hey, this is really important for us to get together and talk about this. There's a lot of information here, and I'm sure you're going to have a lot of questions. Let me know when you're available. You know when they open it. You get an email that says they opened it. It tells you how long they watched it. It tells you how many times they opened it. You know, they can forward it to different people. You can see. So it's very helpful. But the mortgage coach community is great. Dave puts together so much information for, like, if I was a new loan officer, I would literally go to Dave's YouTube and I would watch.
Everything.
I mean, there are so many loan officers that have so much experience that share everything, because good loan officers work out of abundance, not scarcity. So they share. Everybody shares. Everybody will help each other. But yeah, so, you know, making sure the customer understands all those, the different options, MI, lender paid MI, no MI, bigger down payment, less of a down payment. It's amazing. Like, we just do this every day, so it's intuitive to us, but people don't understand what $20,000 more of a loan does, or what changing the purchase price by $50,000 does. Some people are like, oh my gosh, the payment only went up $34.
Yep.
You know, it's so, you know, you really have to be patient and slow down and really make sure the customer is understanding. Now, there are some people that are very, very experienced borrowers. They've done it many times.
No doubt.
And you got to learn that too. You got to talk to them differently with the total cost analysis than you would somebody that is doing it for the first time. So you got to read those signals.
So let me go back a tick so that people that can hear this, and I want them to understand from your perspective, you know, the total cost analysis does a lot of things, but there, you know, what are the pieces of it that you like the best, that you think delivers the highest experience or the greatest opportunity for conversion? You know, what are the elements that you think, hey, on any quote, these are the core things that somebody should be delivering? You know, break out a couple of those.
Well, I mean, you really have to hone in on cash to close, payment.
Yes.
What's your payment? Cash to close, and you know, the closing costs. You know, whether you're paying points to buy your rate down, or you're not paying points and not buying your rate down, or you're actually taking a little bit higher rate and getting a credit so that you have less cash to close. But the elements in it that, you know, you obviously you want to show them the interest rate, you want to show them the payment, you want to show them the cash to close, and those things need to be accurate. So we try to keep it simple. We bucket 3 closing cost buckets. We teach 3 buckets. So, I mean, because, you know, you look at an LE, I mean, they still confuse me. I mean, so we try to say, hey, you know, no matter who's your lender, there's lender costs to do a loan. There are third-party costs that are not lender costs. And then there are prepaids. And then we'll take them through those 3 buckets and what that means and how you can see those once you start to get your disclosures and stuff. But we bucket those in Mortgage Coach. We don't want to focus in on those. We want them to understand what the costs are. And when we teach them those 3 buckets, it really helps.
You know, it's so funny. So Jackson has been hanging out with us for a little bit, and he just said, you know, thanks, this is great. I'm picking up tidbits, you know, on what's going on. And then he just echoing your comment, which I agree with. I've said forever. You know, that's the one thing I love about this community. Although we're all competitive, folks do not mind helping out the new guy learning in the trenches. And it's absolutely true. I mean, it's how I learned the business. Jackson was going to great originators and asking, like, how do you do this? And the great ones, Sam, to Sam's point earlier, live in abundance, and they absolutely tell you what's going on. Jacob from YouTube, what's up, dude? The process is big, and setting the right expectations on what to expect is crucial. And, you know, Sam was going over that. So let's unpack a little bit more on that question or that comment that Jacob made, Sam. What are the expectations you're setting with the customer up front during this consultation process? What are you telling them?
I mean, you got to walk them through the steps. You got to let them know how this is going to go. You got to, you know, make sure they understand the escrow process. You know, we want to let them know. I mean, our 3 words are we're going to educate. That's our job, is to be a teacher. We're going to educate. We're going to communicate throughout the process. The biggest complaint in our industry is we don't communicate properly.
Yeah.
And we're going to close on time for the cash that we said to close at the interest rate we gave you and the payment we gave you. So we're always talking about education, communication, execution. Nobody wants a moving truck sitting in a hotel for a weekend. Happens to all of us. But you really want to make sure that they understand those elements. The timelines, we give a home loan plan that shows them the milestones. And in those milestones, they have tasks.
Yes.
Your initial docs, we need them by this date. Once we get an approval, which is another milestone on this date, we're going to need the conditions that we ask you for by this date. When you share that communication with the listing agent, buying agent, and the borrower, everybody's on the same page. Escrow, title, everybody knows the roadmap. Nobody's going to get surprised. So you really want to make sure that they understand the roadmap and the plan, and then you got to execute the plan. So, obviously when you think of consultation and quoting, you just think about you're just going to have to give a rate and a quote and closing costs and points. But that's just, it's such a small element. It's an important piece, but it's just one of the many things that you got to educate and teach people through this process.
So what I hope everybody's hearing, which Sam just pouring out here, is that when you consult and quote a customer, it's so much deeper than here's my rate. What I loved, Sam, when you talking about the expectations and the flow, like the roadmap. Because I guarantee you, when they go out and shop, which customers do, it's all good, and they go, well, can I get that roadmap, that you have? And these other companies are going to stare at them like, what do you mean roadmap? Like we'll close. Like, well, I got this roadmap from the Gaylord Hansen team, and it was amazing. It said, if I do this by this date, here we're going to close. It's all backed into my close of escrow. And, this is the conversation. You have to educate the customer on what really is going on in addition to the rate. There's so much going on in addition to the rate.
Yeah, we're an advisor. Like, we are helping somebody with a very, very important thing. Nobody should take that lightly. Everybody should be trained properly. You should have the right tools. And obviously you should be giving accurate, timely information. So, that's really what we set out to do. And, we try and get better at it every single day. We sit in rooms with each other. We role play.
Yes.
We take different objections that have come up that week, and we'll role play it with each other as front end loan officers. And that really helps make people better. And it's very uncomfortable to role play, but you do it for 4 or 5 times, and it's very, very helpful.
So I want to take like I call it a pregnant pause or a pastoral pause, and talk about this from a leadership perspective. This isn't a leadership centric podcast, but Sam is a great leader on the team, and it'd be naive to oversee this or just overlook this, because you brought up some great originators. In fact, I couldn't even count how many of your originators made it to the Chairman's Elite Club. It was just insane. 10. Jeez. Every time I was reading the names, and I'm like, another Gaylord Hansen, another GHD. And so you're bringing up great people. You're training them well. Can you talk a little bit about the power of role playing in quoting and consulting? Because it makes people really uncomfortable, and it's an uncomfortable thing. But then you think about it, they're going to be on the phone with a customer that's equally as uncomfortable, or if not more, when they're given some kind of objection. So, like, share with everybody, like, what was the recent experience? What happened? What was the objection? What was the question? What was happening?
It is uncomfortable. Not everybody likes to do it, but if everybody's in there listening, I'll just point out, if everybody's in there listening, they're getting what they need. But it really is good to push yourself out of your comfort zone and get out of that. I always tell people, like, well, I don't really like talk, like we're looking at each other, pretending we're on the phone. I'm like, well, then stare at the wall. Like, don't look at each other. But, the price is a really big one. We will role play that takes it through, like, hey, the price is very important. I can tell you that the lowest price on the wrong strategy is way more costly than a competitive price on the right strategy. And, like I said, there's a lot of other things that need to go right. You got to do things on time. You got to order the appraisal. It's got to be reviewed properly. Title report's got to be clean. Underwriting's got to be done accurately. You got to protect the earnest money deposit, all the things that we've been talking about. So we'll role play those elements a lot. But the price one is right now, especially as, gosh, when you talk about refis winding down a little bit, it's there's a price wars going on right now. And I know that everybody, everybody has price challenges. I've had them from the day I got into this business. You have price challenges. Somebody's always going to have a better price. So you got to figure out how to role play that and deal with that. Well, and let's just address, the elephant in the room is in the mortgage industry, it's not all the same. There's competing models inside the mortgage industry. So, you've got credit unions with a teller sitting there who is paid what they're paid. And there's a rate on the wall. And so they just go, what's the rate today? And they go, it's right there, and so you've got companies that don't believe in loan officers. And I won't name names, but you can find them on the internet where they literally say loan officers have no role. They're too expensive. Their value is overcharging the customer. And then yet by regulatory requirements, they still have to have an NMLS licensed person talking to the customer. And if you just go to consumernmls.com and look them up, I was joking with a friend because we got this LE from this deal on a purchase. And I was like, this guy was a dim sum baker last month. And that's that. And you're talking about a purchase loan where in this market, this is what you're going to lay your cards with. So it's just, there aren't everything's created equal. It's so true. We literally just had one last month where somebody just, undercut us, had a better price. Borrower said, I'm sorry, I'm going to go with them. And 10 days later, calls back and says, hey, they can't do it. They made a mistake. They say I can't use this portion of my income or whatever the case may be. This one was income. Yep. And then we do it. So, sometimes, people learn the hard way, but, I do believe there will be a time where somebody can just go on the internet and pick their mortgage and select their rate and push buttons. But we are advisors. You're never going to be able to get rid of the advisory part of this. There are more first-time home buyers right now because of the birth rates in the 80s. Average first-time home buyers, 33, 34, 35, 36. Well, all those people were born in, 82, 83, 84, 85, 86, 1986. And those birth rates were rising by the thousands. And not only that, home builders aren't building as many homes as they used to in previous decades. So, we're talking about, inventory. We used to think 2 months was low inventory. We're talking 2 weeks right now. There's, people are putting offers on houses before they didn't even go look at it yet. So, I don't know how we got off on that tangent, but it's crazy times. And I do believe that that's the most important part, is the advisory part. Yes, you can go maybe pick your own rate and stuff, but are you picking the right rate? Should you be putting that money as a down payment, or should we be restructuring your debt so that you have better cash flow? You could actually pay off your loan 7 years earlier and save $196,000 instead of paying for those 2 cars and these 3 credit cards and this school debt, school loan. By the way, Sam, a lot of people think that that's a refinance question, and it's a both question. It's a irregardless question, and that's not a word. It's a regardless question. I've been saying irregardless for years because my father did, and then you look it up in the dictionary, and it literally says this is not a word. So every time I say it, I'm like, that's not a word. But this is what I want people to hear that has happened this whole 30-minute conversation so far. Sam started in the beginning of this conversation when I posed the question, what's your rate? He started with, you have to understand the value you provide the customer. You have to build intentional systems and processes to really understand what you're capable of delivering. And what he's really saying is you got to understand your value. Like when someone works for you, what's the experience and the value that they provide? And once you understand that, then you can say things like, hey, if rate's the only thing you're caring about, we might not be the best fit because we're built to do all these other things. We're built to provide this level of service, this kind of experience, this kind of closing efficiency, and here's the roadmap, here's the tools, here's the things we provide. And we're built on some wisdom, right? The old joke of the plumber that comes in to this big corporation because the water heater's broken, and he uses his hammer and he bangs the water heater and it turns back on. And they're like, that was amazing. He's like, thank you. And then he sends them the invoice for $10,000 and they go, can you itemize this? Have you heard this joke before? No. Oh, yeah. He goes, can you itemize this? $10,000 invoice. You just hit the pipe, and he's like, yeah, absolutely. And it's like $1 hitting the pipe, $9,999 knowing how to hit the pipe. Yep. It's true. Like you're sitting down with somebody, and if they don't even want to take the time to have this consultative experience, then
you got to wash your hands. But when they do, and they realize that you're going to ask questions like, we need to put 10% down instead of 20, and you need to take that other 10% and you need to pay off all this garbage. And now your total payment for debt, right? Not just your mortgage, but your debt load is now this. I mean, that's what a professional brings to the game.
I mean, we literally had one where we generated $4,000 a month more in cash flow, and then said, hey, blow 2,000 of it. Just go out to dinner with 2,000. Put the other 2,000 on top of your payment, and you'll pay your loan off in 20 years instead of 30. And here's how much you would save. Like, so this is the aha moments that people have when you do this properly. And there's so many. It's almost like no mortgage is the same. When you look at somebody's credit score and their purchase price and their loan amount and their debts and their income and their asset, I mean, it's literally unique every time. Yeah. So it's important to understand that, and it's important to give somebody the right advice and the right strategy that they can minimize their interest expense and maximize their wealth and grow wealth. And that's really what the game's all about.
Well, so Sam, let me kind of wind down with a couple questions here. Thank you for your time today, by the way. Super appreciative. I know how busy you are. Let's if you've got a brand new loan officer, fresh off the NMLS licensing test, right? Like just sitting there, super excited. What do you tell them to do to get better at this part of the game?
What I would tell them is you find a mentor, somebody that's very experienced, and you go work for them and you support them and you help them and you listen to every one of their conversations until you feel you're comfortable enough and you've learned enough and you actually have the skills and the knowledge and the experience to actually properly advise someone. But how long would you need to, support somebody and be that? I mean, it could be years. Yeah. I mean, it's years. We don't hire someone off the street and say, you go be a loan officer. I mean, it's not okay. I mean, we have to take care of the consumer. The consumer is first. They're at the center. We have to serve them properly. And of course, all the regulation that was put in place was meant to serve the consumer better and make bad actors not be bad. But a lot of the regulation hurts them. And so you got to be able to navigate that stuff too. But yeah, I would say you have to get a mentor and you have to learn from somebody that's doing it at a high level.
So let me summarize a couple things you said, Sam, and tell me what I've missed here or what you would add to it. So in order to perfect your craft in your consultation and your quoting process, number one, be really clear on your value. Really understand your systems, your process, refine that, dive deep on that so that you can understand very clearly how to communicate that to anybody you're talking to. Number two, they're going to want to know rates, but it's more important at the beginning to understand their hopes and dreams, ask some core questions, honor the fact that they want to talk about rate, but understand that that's not where we start. That's where we finish. We got to kind of get through this process here. And then really delivering to them in the consultation and quoting process, all the other pieces that they might not see when they think of, I just need to know what my rate is, talking about what's important to them, talking about closing on time, talking about the process. I loved your roadmap, introducing the other things of value that they're going to be using through their relationship with you. What else would you add to that list? Did I miss anything?
Well, the only other thing I would add is that roadmap. We start with that, but we actually send them that every single week. Right. With the actual dates when things are happening, so they see where they are on that road. So, it's really about making sure that you're creating an experience that they can, at the end of it, say, wow, I really felt like that was how it's supposed to be done. And I'm going to refer my family or my friend to you. And that's really what we're after. We believe we should help anyone we can. We'll believe that, gosh, if you go to someone else, you might not get what you deserve. And so, of course we want to convert every single lead.
Hell yeah.
We don't. I mean, of course you always have to do a bunch of work and sometimes people fly away, but that's part of our business and you got to learn how to deal with that. And it's painful every single time, here 18 years later, like you pre-approve somebody for 3 months, help them get a contract, make the call to the listing agent, send a video to the listing agent about how strong your buyer is and how strong that, what you're going to do and how you're going to execute. And they get it accepted, and you use all your tactics to help them get a contract accepted, and then they leave you for $200. I mean, there's just people like that. So you got to have thick skin. You got to learn how to deal with it. Those are the only things I would add.
What I want everyone to hear here as we wrap down, and what I've always been impressed with, Sam, with you and your team, is just the level of thoughtfulness and intentionality you've put behind your process. And I hope people walk away with that little nugget as they look at their own process, because I feel like mortgage bankers tend to wing it, tend to do things organically that you've just done because that was how your mentor trained you, and maybe that's what you think is right. People missed inside this conversation, Sam, that you have an unbelievable mastery of your numbers. You know how many leads you're quoting and what's happening and how it's converting and not converting. You're role playing consistently. You're digging into contemporary issues, seeing if you can refine the process, ask better questions. I mean, I hope everyone hears this and understands there's an opportunity for everybody to put this level of intention in their own business. And then, then they can maybe get close to your results. Because I think everyone sees numbers and they're like, oh, wow. And then they're like, well, how do they do that? And I'm like, it's hard work.
I mean,
the craft.
And it's a teamwork. I mean, yes, 10 of our loan officers are chairman's elite, but the 30 people behind them that, or 25 or whatever it is, I mean, they are the heart and soul. And, the loan officers usually get the glory in the chairman's elite world, but it really takes a good team and the right people and the right processes. And that's what I would focus on.
Well, Jackson saying thank you. Sam, I appreciate your time today, dude. You always bring a lot of insight into these podcasts. So thanks for carving some time. And for everybody out there, I hope you guys appreciated today's episode. Please see us, join us next time when we kick off another Modern Lending podcast. I'll see you guys all on the internet.
Thanks, Alec.